Hello everybody, this is Salil Tripathi and I'm speaking from Geneva at the UN Annual Business and Human Rights Forum, and today I'm with Karamat Ali, who is the Executive Director at the Pakistan Institute of Labour Education and Research. Karamat has had an interesting experience working on seeking compensation for victims in a specific case where there was a fire in a factory called Ali and Company. Am I right?
Ali
Yes.
Enterprise.
Yeah. Can you tell us that story? What happened?
Yeah. Well, thank you. What happened was that on the 11th of September 2012, there was a huge fire in this factory, produced garments, jeans, etc. And it was a large-scale factory, employed about 1,500 plus people. But as you know, I mean, most of the people in our part of the world, they work under informal contracts or informalized conditions. So out of those 1,500 plus, there were only 235 people who were registered with the Social Security Department of the. Otherwise, most of the workers were not even documented. So when this fire took place, it took 259 lives. People were burnt alive because there were no emergency exits, and most people were working on the first floor or in the basement.
And which city was this in?
This is Karachi.
Karachi itself,
Yeah,
right.
Karachi is, as you know, the largest
Yes.
industrial city. So in this fire, what happened was that because of lack of emergency exits, the workers could not extricate themselves from, and they were burnt alive.
And were these all men, or were they men and women?
It was both men and women, and we suspect there were some children also, but since there was no record, we don't really know, because there are, out of the 259 who lost their lives, there were 19 people who could not be identified, so they were buried. Even after the DNA test, their identity could not be established. So they were buried like number 1, 2, 3 and 19. So this fire, I mean, this was the largest incident of factory fire in Pakistan's history. So there's some 55 workers who were injured and 259 died. And this factory was awarded an SA 8000 certificate just 3 weeks before the incident.
All right.
Yeah. And so when it happened, there was no union in the factory, and the government textiles sector is the least organized. In any case, in Pakistan, we don't have more than 1% workers organized
In the organized sector.
in the unions. So, I mean, it was a very, very weak situation. There was no possibility of mobilizing workers and unions to get justice for the victims of it. So we worked on what could be the strategy. So we got together a group of organizations, including trade unions, but human rights organizations like the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan. There were some women's organizations. There was organizations that took up certain human rights related issues. So we put together this coalition. We decided to take the judicial route in the first place, because this factory violated every law of the land. So we thought, given the fact that the judiciary in Pakistan after 2007 movement, where the then military dictator, he tried to sack the Chief Justice and other judges. So there was a huge movement initiated by the lawyers, but then
strengthening the judiciary, yes.
That everybody became part of that. So that allowed the judiciary to become relatively independent, as well as more sensitive towards ordinary people's issues. So we thought, we moved the court. So we went to the court, we petitioned, and we asked for the court to fix responsibility for this tragedy. Also look at how all these violations had taken place, and various government departments really abdicated their responsibilities, and they should be brought to justice also.
How was the response from the government and the owners?
Now the government, obviously, I mean, most governments in Pakistan are indifferent to the labor issues anyway.
Yeah.
But this particular government that was there at that time, it did not take any initiative on its own. It only became active once we went to the court and the court passed orders. We made the federal government a party, we made the provincial government and the various departments, as well as we asked the court to order institution of murder cases against employees, because this was cold-blooded murder. Because one, there were no
Exits, yeah.
exits. Secondly, the only door that was open was locked from outside after the fire erupted. Because the manager then admitted before the court that we locked it because we were afraid that when workers, running out, they will steal the clothes.
Okay.
And so, you can imagine the
Yeah.
kind of mindset.
Mindset and mentality, yes.
So, in our view, those workers were deliberately burnt alive, and so it amounted to cold-blooded murder, and we wanted them to be caught and tried for murder,
Yes.
apart from other violations. So, by the court order, the employer, there were three of them, a father and two sons. Father was really old, so he got bail from the court, but his sons and the manager, they were arrested. They were in jail for almost 5 years, 5
Right.
months. Anyway.
And you also targeted the buyers, right?
And then what happened was, this German buyer, because we work on a South Asian level, so we have a network of unions in South Asia, especially in the government sector, because that is one common sort of industry. So they were friends in Bangladesh, and this German firm, we didn't know that they were almost the sole buyer. So because they knew one of their consultants was in touch with people in Bangladesh, because they were also sourcing from Bangladesh. So they contacted one of the government unions in Bangladesh, asking them, we want to help, so can you put us in touch with some organization in Karachi? So all of them knew us, so they gave them my contact number, and I got a call from this German firm saying, we want to come and discuss and we want to help. So we said good. So they came to Karachi. So we had a meeting. It was their managing director and one human resource development person. So by that time, then with the help of the Clean Clothes campaign, we were working already together. So we found out that they were actually the sole buyer. All the production of this factory was sourced by them. So in our view then, those workers were actually working for this German firm, not for the
Ali and Company, yes.
So we said, okay, then you have a responsibility.
And this company is called Kick and Company?
KIK.
KIK, right.
So when these people came, we had a meeting, and they took the position that, well, we want to help, even though we don't have any responsibility. So we said, no, we don't want to discuss with you. If you have come to give charity to the workers, that you don't come to us. You can go and find some other organization and give your charity through such an organization. In our view, they were working for you, because you did not set up a factory yourself, but practically this factory was exclusively producing for you, and you had certain obligations under your own codes and also under the local laws, and the consensus that you must look at the working conditions and ensure that local laws are being complied with. You have done nothing. So you are actually equally guilty, because they had never visited the factory themselves.
Right, okay.
Yeah? And they went by this SA 8000 certification. And so we said, if you don't own up your responsibility, then we don't want to discuss anything. So we they said, okay, we're leaving. They were staying in a hotel. But then they came after us, saying, no, we want to discuss. So we had a long discussion about, all these UN conventions, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, the ILO Convention. In our view, every citizen of this world has an obligation to work for the implementation of the rights enshrined in those.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, as global citizens, who will implement all these charters and conventions?
Yep.
Either the state does it. If it doesn't, the citizens also have. So therefore you are responsible. You are governed by those conventions, covenants and charters. So that is why you must accept responsibility, and then we can discuss what does it mean. Anyway, they said, okay, we go back and we'll discuss it with our board of directors, etc. And this was like in the beginning of October. The accident happened in September. We filed our cases in the first week of October. And these people came, I think, in the second week. They went back, they discussed it with their board of directors. And then they asked us, okay, can you come? We want to have a meeting to work out the details. So they asked me to come to Germany, and I said, no, maybe better we meet in Holland.
Right.
Because Clean Clothes Campaign was our partner organization, and I wanted them to be there.
Yeah.
And their international secretariat is based in Amsterdam. So we had a meeting in The Hague. They came there, and we had like almost half a day discussion, and finally they agreed that they have a responsibility. And in the meantime there was a big campaign, which Clean Clothes Campaign, some media groups in Germany, some television channels, they took up the issue. Some other organizations like the German Trade Union, FES, the Friedrich Stiftung, all those people, they took up the issue, and they took it up also with the German government. So the German government had got involved. And then this Tazreen factory accident happened in November. So all that created a lot of pressure on this KIK.
Right.
So we met in the beginning of in December, and we had an agreement on 3 points. One was that they will give $1 million as immediate relief to be distributed, because they wanted to get out of that pressure. They wanted to be seen to be doing something.
Yes.
So they immediately, we signed this agreement on the 21st of December 2012. They sent this $1 million the next day into our account. So we said, no, we are not going to distribute this. We want, first of all the claims to be, brought together, and then some credible body should basically verify that, so that nobody is left out, or, and we also, by that, we get documentation of for future kind of. So we asked the Sindh High Court to form a judicial commission which should distribute this money. A certain, every individual's share in the compensation, and then distribute. So a commission was formed under a retired judge of the Pakistani Supreme Court, and the commission took about 5 to 6 months. It went public, asked for claims, then verified it through different government departments and agencies, and it established the fact that there were 259 dead people and 55 injured, and they then worked out the amount of compensation, and this was distributed. In the meantime, KIK people were just after us, why are you delaying it? I said, no, but this process has to be done. So finally it got distributed, and then they had second thoughts, because the second point was long-term compensation to be determined by a mutually agreed mechanism and distributed amongst them. And third was then for them to financially support an agreed mechanism which would be aimed at improving safe working conditions in the garment industry in Pakistan. And they agreed to put in about $500,000 into that. So after this was distributed, they contacted us. They said, give us a proposal about setting up a mechanism. So we said, no. Second point is long-term compensation. First that has to be decided, and then we will give you a proposal. So then what happened? They started, like backtracking. Then, in the meantime, the managing director who had signed the agreement, I was either sacked or forced to leave or whatever, but he left the company. And then the new people, they started telling us, look, we didn't have the responsibility. Our managing director put us in a very awkward position. And we have given $1 million and we don't think we owe anything more to anybody. But we will be willing to support this improvement kind of stuff. We said, no, you have a written agreement. If you violate that, we will take you to the court. So between 2013 and 2015, there was a deadlock on this issue of long-term compensation. In the meantime, with the help of all these friends, Clean Clothes, there was this European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights, they came in. There was a group of lawyers from Italy. They came in to take up the issue of this Italian company called RINA, which was subcontracted the SA 8000 certification by the SAI, and this RINA in turn subcontracted it to a Pakistani group, and that group issued a recommendation to RINA to give this certification. And then later on, this Pakistani group also admitted that they had not visited the factory. So they had issued a certificate
without even visiting it.
Without even visiting. So in this process, then we were mobilizing people in Germany with the help of all these friends. The largest union in Germany, AG Metall, they took up the issue. The German Confederation, DGB, they came in, and we had 2 or 3 major conferences in Germany where this issue was raised. And then a South Asian group in the German parliament, they took up the issue. The Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, they came in. The Foreign Ministry came in, and they all put a lot of pressure on KIK to fulfill their obligation. So eventually we had a meeting in November 2015 where the KIK people, the 2 people who are here now, they came and they met with one of the victims who we had sent to Germany together with a colleague of mine, and they said, okay, we are willing to discuss. So what should be the mechanism? So then we proposed that the International Labour Organization, because they had intervened in the Rana Plaza and then this accord was
an alliance, both of them.
So he said, here the issue is because there is an ILO convention, Convention 121, which deals with workplace injury and death.
Safety,
So we would like the long-term compensation to be determined under that convention with the facilitation of the ILO. And the German government supported our position. And finally, in March 2016, the ILO put together a kind of a mission to visit Pakistan and ascertain what are the elements that need to be taken into account. So that mission came in May. For 2 weeks, they went around, met with the government people, they met with people in the trade union, they met with us. So they went back and then they came up with the report. And then there was a follow-up meeting, and we were represented in those discussions by the Clean Clothes campaign because they were like a part of the agreement that we had. And then the industrial union also came in because they were also taking up this issue. So with the German government being represented, KIK, the ILO's Social Security unit, and these 2 organizations. We participated in some meetings via Skype because we thought we are being represented properly. So eventually the target was that before the 4th anniversary, this issue should be resolved. So the 4th anniversary was on the 11th of September
this year.
And in that week, the ILO team was able to pull together this agreement, which obligated the KIK to pay $5.15 million in excess to the $1 million. And now that the ILO team is working on this, so agreement has been signed. So this will be like converted into regular pensions for the survivors and the families. So So this is in a way a landmark.
It is a
agreement
landmark outcome, absolutely.
Because it has never happened before. I mean, in the case of Rana Plaza, it was again the brands contributing, not really taking any responsibility.
Right.
And ILO only taking the role of convening the meeting. But here, for the first time, the ILO has
stepped in and did
something for the implementation of its convention.
An agreement, yeah.
So it establishes liability of the buyer. So
no, it is a remarkable achievement.
Hopefully we don't have such accidents.
Yes.
But if there is an accident in any of our countries that they produce garments, and the buyer will be immediately liable.
Accountable for that, yes.
And a formula has already been worked out.
No, it's an important precedent.
It's really very important also in the sense that the base that has been worked out for what would be the income of a worker, or what should have been the income of a worker at the time of the accident. Even though the minimum wage in Pakistan at that time was 12,000 rupees. But we proposed that actually the minimum income should have been 31,000 rupees. We used the, you know, I'm sure you are aware with the Asia Floor Wage Initiative.
Yeah.
They had done some work. And then there is this Wage Indicator Foundation based in Amsterdam. They have been working on this. So we took the data there and we proposed that it should be calculated on a living wage basis, not on the minimum
wage basis, yes.
So that principle has been accepted. So it was, I mean, the ILO team proposed 25,500 rupees a month as the wage which is close to a living wage. And now the pension will be 75% of that wage.
Okay.
So it is much above the minimum wage. So that's a very important principle that we can use in all our countries in terms of determining pension for minimum pension for workers in the government sector.
Right.
So finally we have got this, and now the deadline is that by the end of this year all the details will be worked out, and an oversight committee will be formed there, which will may comprise of representatives of unions, of government, some employers, and some departments like the Social Security Department or Employees Old Age Benefits institution will be assigned to undertake the task of disbursement of pension. The High Court will be involved in the oversight. If there is any dispute, then the High Court decision will be binding.
Finally,
So that way, much delay, but finally we have a very good
outcome at the end.
In the end, and we hope the workers will be able to use it. Secondly, it should also work as a kind of incentive for the buyers and the employers to spend a little money on health and safety.
Absolutely.
So we were calculating, for example, now the KIK has ended up paying $6.15 million. If they had spent, in my view, say $10,000 a year, sending somebody from its own office to look at the working condition, health and safety, so it will cost them one air ticket and maybe 3 days stay in Karachi. It won't be more than $10,000. So they had been sourcing from that factory for 10 years. 10 years they would have spent maximum $100,000. So now compare that
with the
$6.15 million. So it should help them to calculate. It's better to spend $10,000 a year.
Prevention better than cure.
Send your own person.
Yeah.
The local manufacturer will know that they have to really comply with the minimum standards, and that will save lives. Also, their profits will go up by $5.75 million. They won't have to pay that. So I think it's
it's a hugely precedent-setting case, and
lot to learn for everybody. And one thing that I personally feel is very important is that, most issues in production processes need cooperation. But this area can only function if there is cooperation between the workers, the managers, employers, and the government department.
Right.
So, because if you set up, say, health and safety committees in each workplace, so you will have to have a trained workers
Yeah.
representative, you will have to have a trained lower management person in that committee at the shop floor, and you need trained labor inspectors. So we are proposing now that at least in this area there should be joint training
Yeah.
programs for representatives from these three sort of stakeholders. It creates a personal kind
confidence,
of
yeah.
bond. People know each other, and they can work without like the inspector trying to extort money,
Right.
or the manager trying
Yeah.
to hide things, or the worker asking for unnecessary or unreasonable demands, or even when some protective gears are given to workers, they don't use them. So I mean, this needs the cooperative environment. So we hope this will lead to that, at least in the area where lives of people are at
At
stake.
stake, absolutely.
And I mean, I would like to acknowledge the support of everybody
Yeah.
in this, because this is an outcome of solid international solidarity.
Absolutely.
So within South Asia, we got a lot of support
Yeah.
from government sector workers of Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and in Europe, like the Clean
Clothes campaign, yes.
they have done wonderful work. Then the German trade unions, and in this case the German government, and to a large extent even the Dutch government, because Dutch government and the German government, they teamed up and they organized the first Asian conference on living wage in Islamabad in May last year.
Yes, my colleague,
this year.
our executive director John Morrison was there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this other friend who is here, Harpreet,
From India, yes.
she had come.
She was there too,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah.
So I mean,
From the
that
Resource
also
Center.
helped a lot, because we got a resolution passed in that conference that since we are all gathered here to discuss the issue of living wage, so the compensation for the deceased and the injured in the Ali Enterprise factory fire, their compensation should be based on what the living wage would be.
Yes.
And it was unanimously passed. So we acknowledge the support of everybody who had come to that conference. There were governments, there were employers, there were workers, there were brands. And I think in a way, whether in some cases it was conscious solidarity and support, in other cases it was not that conscious, but it all has come together for a very good outcome.
Yeah, one final question, Karamat Bhai, that you have worked on this issue, you have now seen at close quarters how the mechanism works, how remedies need to be discovered. My question is really about the auditing, because most factories that operate in the developing world, not just in South Asia, also in Southeast Asia, are providing goods for Western brands. And Western brands, for a range of reasons, don't want to own these factories but want to have other people doing it for them. And one way they tend to ensure that their standards are being met by these factories is through auditing. But the examples you showed of SAI in this particular case were not very encouraging. Obviously, there are faults in the system. What do you think is the way forward? I mean, should there be completely independent NGO monitoring? Should it be trade union? Should it be supervised by another body? How would you like to see that happen?
Well, you see, first of all, I feel this whole business of auditing, it has proved to be really a fraud. I mean, how can you be outsourcing it like that without even ascertaining the capacity of an organization, without having any serious guidelines? I mean, if you are given the task, I mean, then you should not have the freedom to just
give it to somebody else to do it, yeah.
And like this Pakistani group consisted of only 2 persons. They were working from a small office, and they were not seriously engaged in this.
Right.
Business. So one thing is that it has to be the responsibility of the state. We have seen this happening in Pakistan. You know, under the military rule of Ziaul Haq, in 1981, there was a circular, not even change in the laws, saying no inspection will be done without prior intimation to the employer. Okay. Now,
that defeats the purpose.
yeah, there was an element of surprise and independent inspection.
Yeah.
Okay. It had problems because there is corruption in all our societies, so sometimes the employers they were bribing the inspectors and asking them to write all good reports. But the point is, if the employers were serious, they should not have actually given bribes. They should have complied with the laws. So they went and they were complaining against the inspectors. And Ziaul Haq, being very pro-employers, he practically stopped the inspection. So there is this part which needs to be corrected, that nobody should be able to extract bribes from the employers. So you can make it tripartite. You can have local committees based in each industrial area, which should have representatives of employers, of the government, and of the workers, plus some independent professionals who can, give professional advice. So you can find ways of doing impartial, transparent inspection. But this certification is no substitute for that. So I think we need to discuss this more sort of in depth, and the ILO conventions must be implemented, local laws should be improved and expand, like we already have in the ILO this tripartite plus framework now. So you can include as many
stakeholders as you want.
As you want. So I'm all for making it transparent. You have to have well-trained inspectors. You have to train workers. You have to, have solid health and safety committees at the workplace. That will be the biggest deterrence against any outside imposition. So you train workers. You pay them for taking responsibility.
Yes.
Right? They should get time off. You should organize drills in each factory occasionally, right? Health and safety should be a public issue. There should be public education on that, right?
Yeah.
So, it has to be a broad, collaborative, cooperative, societal effort.
Yeah.
So you plug all the loopholes, but this certification must go. If the employer wants a certification for whatever purpose, and they want to continue with it, that should not exempt them from inspection.
Right. No, this has been a signal and important story. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Now the worst thing was that this certification was being financed by the government. In Pakistan, I'm sure you will have something like that in India or other South Asian countries. There has been this Trade Development Authority has been set up. It basically focuses on exports by the Pakistani factory. Now, in that, every exporter is supposed to give 2% of its net profit as contribution to the Trade Development. Now, Trade Development Authority pays the fee for this certification, right? Without having any direct sort of oversight there. So these companies go and they issue a certificate, because if they don't issue the certificate, they don't get anything. Suppose this company had given a report saying there is no compliance, they will not get anything. Now this is, asking for dishonest practices. They should have got their fee in any case. Then they will give you an honest report.
Right.
If you make it conditional to the issuance of a certificate, they don't need to inspect. They will just issue a certificate and get their fee. So like this company, RINA, which is based in Italy, and now there is a case against them. Our friends, Italian lawyers, they have filed a case against them. So this RINA company, this has issued some 150 plus certifications, in a short span of 3 years, right? If you are doing a serious inspection, this is impossible.
Impossible, yeah.
But there are other companies who were there for the last 10 years and 15 years, and they have hardly given maybe 25 certificates. So you have to, this had become a kind of a mechanism where you are seen to be compliant, whereas you are putting workers' lives in grave danger.
Yeah, there is this phrase, right? Who will guard the guardians?
So this has to go, and a new system
Yeah.
with safeguards against all kinds of corruption or extortion have to be put in place.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible when you make it tripartite plus and get in some honest professionals to
Yeah.
be part of that. And without their okay, no report should be issued.
Very
And
much
there
indeed,
can
yeah.
be, I mean, we can
Yeah.
think of innovative, there are a lot of experience everywhere
Yeah.
of inspections as well as accidents. So I'm sure if we hold a South Asian meeting
Yeah.
in one day, we can come up with what will be
A
an
good template for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, your experience is a good template for the future, so that at least those deaths are not in vain. That we know that the ILO can implement and enforce it. We know that there can be cross-border cooperation. We also know that companies, once they see the logic, can play a positive role. And we know that trade unions are not alone, and they can work with their solidarity partners from elsewhere. So
Exactly.
it's a very good story. And thank you, and all the best with your work in the future.